The Jewish custom for the Ten Commandments is to stand. If you're interested in doing so, even if you don't believe any aspect of it to be special, it's definitively special in the way that I described it in the introduction. It's definitely something rather important in human history and which is guiding human history to this day. There are plenty of people who take Ten Commandments very seriously. So if you would like to stand and you're comfortable doing so, then please do. If not, please don't. So, as I said in the introduction, the first of these statements, or first two, depending on how you cut it up, is said in the first person, God himself speaking. Thereafter, the Jews realized that they couldn't handle it, and they told Moses, you tell us what God has to say, and they witnessed the interaction. But what ended up causing the Jewish people to exist as a people with the Torah was this revelation, this theophany, this understanding of God all at the same time. So who is this God? Anochi Adonai Elohecha asher hotzesicha me'eretz Mitzrayim mibeis avodim lo yeh lecha Elohim acherim al panai. Anochi, I, Yud He Vav He, Yehovah, which is how I'll say it now. Anochi, I am Yehovah. Who is this Yehovah? Where does the name Yehovah come from? It comes from when Moses asked God, who are you? What's your name? When I go to Pharaoh and I go to the Jews and I say that you're going to be freeing them, who are you? And God seems to be a bit annoyed. And God says, Eheyeh asher eheyeh. I is what I is. I will be what I will be. And Moses doesn't know. So God says, tell them Eheyeh sent you. I will be sent you. So the way you conjugate the word I will be into the third person, he is I will be, is Yud He Vav He. Happily, we don't know how to pronounce it, so therefore I hope that I'm kosher in the perspective of people who are very concerned about the ways of pronunciation. We don't know the correct way to pronounce it. Nonetheless, as best I can do, it's Yehovah. And God also tells Moses he's not pleased that he has to give him any kind of name. He says the forefathers, they didn't ask for a name. They knew me as El Shaddai, which is the generic word for God. The generic word. They didn't require a separation. Once you require a separation between this God and the false gods, you're giving a reality to the false gods that doesn't exist, which is the greatness of Abraham, his discovery of what it means, a single God. He didn't need the concept of a separate thing. But by this point we do. By this point the Jews definitely did. So these are the words that were supposedly said, according to this book, 3,501 years ago. I am Yehovah, Elohecha, your gods. And again, what Elohim literally means is your powers, your deciders, your rules, the realities that you are interacting with in your life. The realities that you are interacting with in your life, that's who I am. All of them. They're not separate, they're not independent. It's not like your phone is an independent thing. It's not like your toilet is an independent thing. It's not like your eating is an independent thing. I am the God of all. That's what your God means. So I am Yehovah, your gods. Asher hotzesicha, who took you out, me'eretz Mitzrayim, from the land of Egypt, mibeis avodim, from the house of the slaves. That's who God is. That's what they understood. That's who they felt was communicating with them. They felt the one who was communicating with them was the one who gave them independent life, the one who gave them the ability to live. In the Torah portion that was read last week in synagogues all around the world, because Jews read a portion of the Torah, of the 5 books of Moses, in the synagogues every Shabbat. And the portion most recently talks about somebody who is a eved, which you can define as slave, servant, really employee, if we're looking at it in the ancient context. But an employee who lives with his master. An employee who's supposed to do what the master says. But as well, an employee whom the master has to treat him at least as well as he treats himself. If he only has one good pillow, he has to give it to the employee. So it's not exactly slave. In any case, over there it says that if the servant, if the slave, if the eved, if the employee, if he says after 6 years, I don't want to leave, because he's supposed to leave after 6 years. He says, I don't want to leave. I love my master. This is the way to go. Then they take him to the court, and they take him by the doorpost, and they drill a hole in his ear. And then he serves his master la'olam. La'olam is usually translated as forever. Olam also means world, but the truth is what la'olam means is 50 years. 50 years. Society is supposed to reset every 50 years. And I cannot stress enough, please watch the video called Final Chance for a Fresh Start in the Essentials playlist on the main page regarding the 50-year business. Because, yes, So he has to serve him forever. So the commentaries say, do you know why he gets drilled in the ear? What's the business with that? Because first of all, you realize the master has no say. So that's why it's not precisely a master business. This guy gets to say whether he stays or not. So the commentators say that God said, you are my slaves only, nobody else's. You don't belong to anyone else. And God, who is God? He's the one who gave you freedom. To say you are slaves to yourself is misunderstandable because people will say, they'll misunderstand it too easily. But Yehovah is ultimately your best self if you are following that. Yehovah is everything. Nothing is outside of him, as I said in the introduction. But Elohim, perhaps, or what Yehovah wants for you. So there is no contradiction between serving yourself and serving this Jewish God. It is the same thing, if you understand it correctly. So that's who he is. Who are you a slave to? And who, therefore, does the person get punished that he has to serve until the end of that 50-year cycle? That he gets drilled in the ear? You're slaves to the one who took you out of slavery. That's who you're slaves to. It's an amazing concept. You realize this master is invisible. This master is invisible. You may as well say this master doesn't exist. You'd be making a grand error because everything that exists only because it exists. But you can't see it. That's real freedom. Elsewhere, the Bible defines God as the creator, the one who made you. Elsewhere, emes v'hashalom, the truth and the completion, or the goodness, the peace. Let's say the goodness, the truth and the goodness. But in this case, the one who gave you freedom. And we should think about it in our own lives as well. All that we have, the one who's giving you life, this is who this is that is speaking. Your life at this moment, everything you have, everything you are, that's who's speaking. Anochi, I am Yehovah Elohecha, Yehovah your Elohims. Asher Hotzei who took you out, me Eretz Mitzrayim, from the land of Egypt, me Beis Avadim, from the house of slaves. Lo Yelecha, there should not be unto you Elohim Acherim, other Elohims, al panai, upon my face. Meaning before me, in front of me. There should be no other Elohims in front of me. Now, let me speak a little bit to Christians. The traditional Jewish understanding is that it is terrible, absolutely beyond acceptable terrible, for the Jews to consider anybody, including, of course, Yehoshua from Nazareth, a mediator or a secondary God. That is absolutely beyond the pale. However, earlier, a couple of chapters earlier, before this reading of the Ten Commandments, which is on your screen over there, I mentioned in the introduction what it is. It's from over 2,000 years ago, dug up in the land of Israel recently. That's what it is. The Ten Commandments. It starts on the first column, because we read right to left. So on the first column, the bottom line is where I'm reading from over here, Anochi. Beginning with the word lemor, which means quote, as we said in the previous version, in the previous video. So lo yelecha, there should not be unto you Elohim acherim, other Elohims al panai before me. So many Jews understand that earlier in the Bible, about a chapter earlier, where it says that God gave other Elohims to the nations. The other nations perhaps aren't at the level where they can actually serve something that isn't at all comprehensible. And therefore, many people have believed that for Christians to accept Jesus is not necessarily negative, but for Jews to accept Jesus would be absolutely negative. And I speak of him as Jesus now, because even in earliest times, the Jews did not, it appears as best we can tell, certainly the majority, but even among the followers of Yehoshua, they did not see him as a God whatsoever. The few people who tried to convince him of that, they did not buy it. There were followers of Yeshua for a long time. It appears that Muhammad encountered quite a few of them. They were around for a very, very long time. Really. Probably at least 700 years. Muhammad might have finished them off, to be honest. But the idea of Jesus as a God, no. Oh my goodness, absolutely no. This is right here, the beginning of the Ten Commandments, God himself saying absolutely no. Again, this is God talking to the Jews. If you are capable of getting to that, and I'm not saying Jews are capable of getting to that necessarily. I'm not saying that I am. This is not, you know what I'm saying? Right? This is difficult stuff for all of us, for absolutely all of us. You should have no other gods before me.